We are live.
We're live. Oh, wait. Are we still saying that? Is that still a thing that we say? Because I know this also has to go up on audio, too. But, so I don't know how well it sounds. Don't worry, people.
If anything, it's more incentivization to come and find us on YouTube, which is where we're clearly the most active.
Yeah. You know? So. And also, people, just so you know, in terms of a little bit of housekeeping, in order to bring you behind the scenes, I am actually I ordered finally the pop filter that Chris has been telling me to get for weeks now. So sooner than later, quite possibly as soon as next week, you might actually be able to see my mouth talking into the microphone instead of me just being blocked like this. Just saying, some more advancements.
I don't know if is that a punishment or is that a good thing? I
don't
can't
know.
quite figure it out.
You guys decide. Opinion on me changes.
You know what? Also, is it a good thing that it kind of alludes to what we're going to be? I think. Yeah, I'm sorry, Don.
Oh, another one of those.
Take the mood because I think like
another one of those fancy segues right there. All we need is you on a Segway scooter.
I really said that in jest at first, but it kind of works out because I really can't decide if Space Force was a punishment or a good thing.
We're just hopping in on that. We're not even doing intros yet. Come on, man. We've got etiquette to maintain here. Talkin TV podcast, movie nerd, TV nerd. You guys know the drill by this point. It's a little bit more of a relaxed episode. It's a chilled episode. And oh man.
Before we introduce our guest here, and you guys, if you've seen us post this, there's some familiar faces, but some people we love having on the show. I want to thank a few of the people in the chat for hanging. We got Luck Reviews and Bearded Film Reviews, to name a few. Thank you guys for always being here yet again. We appreciate you giving us your time on a Thursday evening.
Yes.
With that being said, Dom, I mean, I'm down to just blast off right into this one. So
I'm ready to go in, and I'm loving the amount of puns that you're bringing to the table already. That already shows that we've got a good episode going here. So let's bring in our guests.
Yeah, it's too easy to make puns around this topic.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, you guys know him. We love him. We want to welcome back to the show yet again, Elliot of Movie Files. Elliot, man, we appreciate you being here, dude. How you been?
Sorry, let me get my audio there. How we doing, guys? Glad to be on tonight talking about Space Force. There is some conversations to be had about this show, the good, the bad, and ugly. So I'm glad to be here with you guys tonight. If not too familiar with my format, I am on YouTube, Movie Files. I like to review a lot of movies, small genre, independent films, big budget films, Netflix, Hulu, all that stuff. Also TV shows, as you guys cover a lot of TV coverage. I do the same on my channel, so definitely check me out if you guys haven't already. But excited to be with you guys tonight talking about Space Force.
And the one thing I will say is to not spoil anything, but Elliot does have a video on Space Force that he put up earlier this week, so I'm hoping you elaborate on some of those opinions here tonight.
For sure.
Yeah, I was about to say, Elliot, you've been a busy guy recently. You've been putting out stuff like every day. Like, how do you just give the viewers a little bit inside the mentality of the world of Movie Files? How was your workflow go that you are able to churn out that much content?
So actually in the last few days with obviously a lot of stuff going on across the world and in particularly in the US, I've been kind of holding off on doing recording, but I'm going to try to get back in the swing of things this weekend. But on a day-to-day basis, man, I just try to. I always try to map out things at least 3 to 4 weeks in advance. So I'm on Netflix's app looking at coming soon, and I'm marking into my calendar if I can, scratch out that time to watch a 10-hour, 8-hour show, whatever the case may be. And same goes with movies. So it's always just planning ahead, just making sure I block out the times where I can sit down and watch those shows and movies. But the biggest thing is, man, something I've been really trying to push on is these smaller independent things that a lot of people aren't talking about, especially with not a lot of movies at the theater. I'm watching stuff like The Eddy, which is a show based in Paris. I'm watching shows like White Lions, which is in Spain. I'm watching Bethel, which is an Indian horror zombie TV show. So I'm trying to just diversify it as much as I can to get people to watch all these smaller independent stuff that sometimes you can find some hidden gems.
No, that's awesome. That's what's up, dude.
I love
major
that,
props to you.
I appreciate it, guys.
That's cool. I mean, hey, look, seems like you're making the best of these, lack of entertainment times that we're kind of living in. I mean, because obviously what we're getting isn't that great, but who always brings his A game, who always gives us some great commentary and critiques and criticisms and just good old hashtags. If you guys know that in joke, our good friend Joe from Guy at the Movies. Joe, man, thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me. Really happy to be here, and for you giving me the space to contribute. let's blast off into this conversation. And first off, Dom needs to make his bed because that really is poor form here. But anyway, so very happy to be here. Guy at the Movies, guyatthemovies.com. You can catch daily news as well as the daily reviews that I try to post every single day this week, as Elliot kind of alluded to. With everything happening in the world, I have steered clear of diving into some of the regular stuff that I do, just because my mind has been consumed, as I know a lot of ours has been with the reality of the world. But hopefully tonight we can step aside a little bit from that, at least for a little bit of a break, and chat and have some fun and talk about this show. It is a show, Force, and go from there.
Oh man, see, Joe, I was gonna hold off on the references, at least for a little bit, in order to give it to you. But now, because you had to go and insult my etiquette again, I just got to say, 6 seasons in a movie, dude. And if you want to be cheered up because of everything that's going on in the world, you can always go on and watch a nice episode of Community on Netflix. This episode is officially sponsored by Netflix. No, we're actually not, but it would be really cool if they did. And I don't know, does that count? Does that count as a segue into our topic of discussion? Because, you know, we're talking about a Netflix original here.
Yeah, I think because the writing on that was so loose and so flimsy, I think if we're talking about what I think we're talking about today, then I think it's 100% justified. So, Dom,
it's funny that you mentioned that about the writing, right? I'm just going to jump right in, because the whole thing about this show, that's just, if I could just get it off the bat, kind of set the tone, kind of the way that this show did with setting its tone, is that it's really confusing to me, because the show doesn't really know whether it wants to be tight and consistent, or just kind of be more lackadaisical and be like this fun, goofy workplace comedy. And it's trying to play both sides and go right down the middle. And it makes for one of the most very confusing, tonally jarring things that I've seen in a while. You know, I'm assuming from the amount of nodding heads in the panel here that a lot of people are more tended to agree with me. But
yeah, I'm gonna let one of our guests go first. But I can't say I disagree with you. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was interesting, right? I mean, just like Dom was just kind of alluding to, I think they were, and I said this much so in my review, and even when I tweet or made a post about on Instagram, that it has a hard time finding its footing. Does it want to be a family drama at times, a political show? Does it want to be a workplace comedy? And it's just like, and it couldn't find what it wanted to be. At least to me, I kind of got a little bit of the rhythm and the momentum, and kind of started to like the characters more by like the sixth or like the fifth or sixth episode. It's only 8 episodes or something like that.
10, but even still, that's a problem.
Yeah. So I mean, there's definitely, and I don't know. We'll talk about later in regards to Greg Daniels and his history of first season 1 shows, a la The Office and Parks and Rec, maybe not being as good as we would think so, as great as those shows are. So there is a little bit of stumbling blocks with the history of Greg Daniels shows, but still, man, I mean, you would think that he would learn from those mistakes and make a good season 1 of a show.
Yeah, Joe, what do you think, man?
Guys, I want to.
And he was frozen.
Uh-oh. I was wondering if that was just me.
You
got me now?
Yeah, we got you now. I can hear you, but I can't see. Okay, now we're good. Joe, what are you thinking, man?
I apologize. So what do I think? I really commend Elliot for trying to find some positives in the characters. I did not enjoy one of these characters. I love Steve Carell, and I thought he was horrendous in this. I really do think that the entire show is ill-conceived. And I know that sounds really bad. And I usually love everything. That's the craziest part. But the tone is off in this. There is zero character development, and there is no depth to the story whatsoever. And it just absolutely boggles my mind that there was no direction. Even the final episode, right? You always think the final episode is going to be like some big whatever. It's just a bunch of ideas thrown at a wall, and like they're like, all right, well, that opens the door to see where we can go in season 2 should Netflix want to continue. I really struggled with this show.
Yeah, dude, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say they already said that they were gonna do a second season, so this
is a show that already reeks of getting a second season.
Yeah, just too many big names attached to it. Steve Carell. They were gonna. Yeah, there was
To quote Corey Coleman from Double Toasted, I mean, Netflix paid for an effing CGI chimpanzee. They're getting their return on
in
investment.
episode 2.
Yep.
They're getting their return on investment.
Yeah,
But
they really do.
I'm right there with you, Joe. I think tone is the word that the first problem comes to mind from, and it's I in the first episode I kind of saw from the beginning what it was gonna be, and I wasn't too into it, but there is a good way to do that. Like it felt more like it was like network comedy, like King of Queens, Everybody Loves Raymond, super corny type comedy that like is for the masses. So I get it, right? Netflix is losing The Office, and Greg Daniels has written shows that are for the masses, but the thing about Greg Daniels shows is that they adopt this niche, this cult, if you will, that sort of takes it and then sort of helps shape it down the line. But the thing is, if you look at that first season of The Office, if you look at that first season of Parks and Rec, yeah, it was messy. Yeah, it was sloppy, but the tone was there. Right. Like Leslie Knope just keeps progressing. But I don't see General Naird. You can't progress if you don't have a foothold to start with. You know what I'm trying to say?
So let's break that down a little bit, because Elliot brought up a really good point and you just elaborated on it about the first seasons. And I'm probably going to freeze again in a second, so bear with me. I'll be back.
At least we're prepared for it this time.
But when it comes to first seasons, The Office is kind of an anomaly, because what they did in their first season was try to replicate the British version. So they had something they were going off of. Parks and Recreation was a new concept. Then, of course, it stumbled in its first season. This is a satire right off the bat, right? We do have a Space Force. The president, we are working on a Space Force. The president, you never see him, but all references show you that it's, Donald Trump. Or tell you that it's Donald Trump. So they do have this goal in mind of being a satire that they don't lean into. And that's what I struggled with is like the jokes when you can identify them and like, oh, that's supposed to be funny. They never land. It's like watching a comedian that can't read the room. And you think like, okay, maybe it needs to get through that first episode and, figure it out from there. But it just never gets there. And the second piece of that is, and I always find something that I struggle to take my attention off of, Steve Carell's voice in this show. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but his like raspy, weird voice, I guess it's to try to differentiate him from what we've seen before in The Office, and we've become so used to him and kind of that role. But oh my God, like it's hard to take any of it seriously.
Yeah. 2 points that I actually have that I want to bounce off of you, Joe. First off, like you could not be more right about the humor, because again, like I was trying to figure out what it was that was off with me about the humor of the show, right? Because I'm like, okay, here's the thing about this show that I just want to say first and foremost. I don't think I think it's a very bad first season. Just as far as first seasons go, I think it makes every single mistake that first seasons do. But the strange thing is that I still do want to see more, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But as far as the humor goes, you're right, because the movie very clearly sets itself up as a satire, but the jokes are very like broad and mainstream, and there doesn't seem to be like a lot of really intricate thought and care into it. Like it's almost like it's trying to be an Armando Iannucci-esque show, like a Veep or an In the Loop, but with the sense of humor of like The Office, but like and it's all over the place there. And as far as Steve Carell goes, I found that Steve Carell has a bit of a problem because besides the fact that he, for whatever, as hard as he has tried, he has given us some incredible performances, like some really good, like Little Miss Sunshine, The Big Short, all of that, like Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. He's got some incredible performances under his belt. But for whatever reason, whenever he goes for like the bigger, more mainstream performances, it always feels like a Michael Scott impression. And it's almost like he's going out of his way in order to like craft like this, like these different intonations just to separate himself from the Michael Scott, because that character and that persona has become so iconic and so grafted to him. It's again, I've talked ad nauseum about how a lot of those late 2000s comedy stars just could not escape those stigmas associated with their personalities. And I feel like Steve Carell is like a leading example of that. Like I said, not a bad actor, given some incredible performances, but he goes out of his way to try and escape that stigma, and it doesn't always benefit him. And this is one of the prime examples. I think another weird example is Foxcatcher, but like I said, that's more of like my own personal take on it.
I completely agree with that, by the way. Yeah. He's going out of his way.
Yeah, but not in a natural way. That's the thing. It feels like he's trying hard. And it's like, guy, if anything, trying harder to try and make us forget about The Office is just going to make us remember The Office more. It's one of those situations. And I guess if we could just dive into the premise too now, Yeah, that's right. That's right. I knew I'd get you eventually. And I guess if we could just dive into the premise real quick. So real quick, in case you guys, like, I just realized we completely jumped into the talk of the show without actually going into the premise yet. The premise is that Steve Carell is this newly promoted 4-star general named General Mark Naird, who is officially promoted to heading the new official Space Force, as part of which is the 5th or 6th branch of the armed forces. And of course, it's a typical thing. Oh, you get a promotion, and now we're just carting you off to some desert somewhere in order to deal with a bunch of lackadaisical losers that we pretty much don't care and have pretty much forgotten about. And it's up to him and John Malkovich as the head of the science division, Dr. Adrian Mallory, in order to whip it into shape. And of course, chaos and pandemonium ensues. And I guess if we could jump ship and kind of jump into the cast now, because one of the things that we have talked about, one of the reasons why we know this is getting a second season, because this cast is tremendous. Like, oh my God, like Lisa Kudrow, Diana Silver, John Malkovich, Jimmy O. Yang, Ben Schwartz, Don Hall as the secretary. Like, the list goes on and on and on. Like, this is definitely an impressive cast. And the strange thing is that even though I think that they were all given, for the most part, bad material, I don't hate all of the performances. I actually think for the most part, a majority of them are actually giving really good performances. It's just they're not given good material to work with. Like, what are your guys' kind of whole thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, going back to, and again, not to just to go back a little bit from Steve Carell's performance, I always kind of took it, and I don't know if I read this in an article somewhere, but I thought that his character and John Malkovich's character as Mallory, I thought they were impersonating someone that was actually like working in the like governmental sectors of the government. So I thought that they were doing like an impression of them and trying to mix their own sensibilities to the character. I don't know if I read that somewhere or not, but neither here nor there. I think that, again, Steve Carell was trying to find his voice and never really did. And again, I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention for the first half of the season. I didn't recognize if he was doing that voicing that Joe was talking about when he was being authoritative, or if he I can't remember when he did the voice, because he wasn't doing it all the time. I don't know if it was a matter of him like dropping the voice and just forgetting about it, or if it was like, oh, I need to be the boss and I need to like have this voice. So, but it was very distracting, very jarring. But performance wise, I think there were two characters that I actually, and I said this in my review, that I actually found to be entertaining and would like to see where they go in a potential season 2 and inevitably a season 2. What was her name? Angela Ali. I found her character to be really charming. That was my first time ever being exposed to her. I found her very charming and liked her character and just thought she was a really good, like, just a nice added addition to the show. And then John Malkovich, I know he didn't work for everyone because he was just kind of dry and was just kind of the straight man throughout the show.
That's what I loved about him.
Exactly. That was the character that I really kind of gravitated to too, because it was just like he's working around these people that he's obviously the smartest one in the room, but I just kind of like that back and forth. But outside of those two characters, those were like the only two characters that I was just like, and Ben Schwartz, I said he's not for me all the time, especially when they force you on him and try to force the jokes there. But when he was sprinkled in, he felt a little bit more complimentary to the show. But like I said, Angela and Mallory are probably like the only two characters that I like enjoyed.
Yeah, I didn't mind Jimmy O. Yang though. I actually did not mind Jimmy O. Yang at all. Ben Schwartz, I agree with you 100%. Like every time he was on screen, I'm like, why are you here? We get it. Why are you here? You know? Yeah, moving on. Like, Joe, what were kind of your thoughts on the cast?
It's a great cast on paper. I completely agree that I don't think they were given enough to work with. And the stuff that they were given was really, I think they were each misused. I think Malkovich definitely has the best performance out of all of them. And he handles it well because he plays it as he's supposed to. I think Steve Carell was overreaching and was trying, like you said, to differentiate himself. Lisa Kudrow was dramatically underused. I'm trying to think of most of the performances that I enjoyed. I'd agree with Elliot were probably some of the ones that I didn't really, the actors I didn't know much about going into it, or that I haven't been exposed to. Ben Schwartz is like 50% of the time I hate him. And 50% of the time I think he's the funniest person in the world. Like John Ralphio in Parks and Rec is one of my favorite characters because it's just, I love when people are ridiculous, but this seems like a more toned down version of that didn't work for him. I don't know. I struggled with all of them just because they didn't, I don't know if it's that they didn't gel. I really do go back to the material that they were given being lackluster. But oh man, like I don't know how you fix that. Is it the writers? Is it
I'll say that in the two, I had a question also. Did they mention, I might have told, because again, I'm not going to lie, guys, the first like 3 or 4 episodes, I was in and out of the show. Like I was on my phone reading emails because it just wasn't catching my attention. Did they say why she was in jail?
No, they never did. And it's
okay, I thought I missed that. I'm like, actually, I must have missed that.
I'm actually really happy that you brought that up because I after I watched the first episode, right? Elliot, I was basically on the same plane as you. Like, that's kind of the reason. Like, this should have taken me like 2 days to finish, and it took me like almost 5 days to finish this whole show. And it's like, what? It's like what? Like 7 hours to watch the whole thing? I think it's 2.
Yeah, 7 hours exactly.
Yeah, because again, to bring it back to Community, hey, I see you there, Joe. It's kind of the same problem that I had with Community season 6, where in Community season 6, right? That was when they were on Yahoo, so the episode started to get a little bit longer, and so as a result, the jokes that were so fine-tuned by NBC to fit into that 20-21 minute time range felt a little bit long. It just felt like they went on for a little bit. But it's funny that you mentioned the Lisa Kudrow thing, because when I saw that, I called. I'm like, they're never going to tell you why she's in jail. I called that from the first episode.
I just thought I missed it.
And I did it and I said it as a joke. Like, I thought, I'm like, okay, how funny would it be if they, I'm like, how funny would it be if they never say why she's in jail? And they did. I'm like, I pulled the Jeff Goldblum movie. I'm like, God damn it, I hate being right all the time about this stuff. Stop being so predictable. Movies.
But here's the thing with that though, like bringing in Community, that show that must not be named. Community really thrives because it has a lot of no names involved. The biggest names when Community started were Chevy Chase and
Joel McHale was known as the guy from The Soup.
From The Soup, right? Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't even consider that a big name. So I think that worked. Just because you have a stacked cast, that to me is a recipe for disaster right off the bat, because you're going in with expectations of what they're going to bring to the table, and there is not enough time in a 38-minute, 34-minute, whatever episode to deliver for each of them. And 10 episodes in a season like this, in a complicated show, right? Like it's about Space Force, and you're supposed to get into this battle between the Air Force and the Space Force and the family dynamics and all the like. What is
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's a point that I brought up in the last couple of years about like these big stacked ensemble casts, right? Mm-hmm. And how, to me at least, the problem was becoming that like, I used to love looking forward to movies that had like celebrity after celebrity after celebrity after celebrity in them. And then I quickly learned that, when you have a bunch of big name famous celebrities in there, it becomes distracting, because the problem is that when you get that, you start to bring in a lot of ego, because ego is just inherent in Hollywood and just any production in general. And so when you get somebody who's been in the biz for a while and has established a name for himself, like almost every single member of this cast, like I think the only like kind of no name in here is Tawny Newsome as the captain, but even still, she's a singer, and Diana Silvers as the daughter. But even still, she's got already 2 huge things under her belt with Booksmart and Ma. And so the problem is that when you get to that, it stops being writing for the characters, and it starts becoming writing to the personalities, and that can get distracting really, really quick. So, Chris, what's been your whole take on this, on the cast here?
No, yeah. So, I mean, I was kind of sitting here like, damn, come on, they're saying what I want to say. Yep. You know, but I do have a few things that I do have a few things that I think differ a little bit. So my whole thing on it is, I think an all-star cast can work. I think, though, this show seems rushed, and I think a lot of that comes from what we haven't really been speaking about. Like, this is Steve Carell's writing debut.
That's true.
And I'm not sure if it's his producing debut as well, but so it seems like him being the lead, the person who has arguably the most weight on his shoulders, where if this thing is going to succeed or fail, right? He's in the most scenes. It's centered around his life, his family. It's like a lot to fill, big shoes to fill. Plus, I'm sure that there was immense pressure behind the scenes for this to be like the Office replacement from Netflix. I mean, let's be honest, this is the whole reason Netflix is making this project, right? They're losing The Office at the end of this year, and that show alone has driven them so much revenue, and it's arguably even more powerful for them than their originals. And they've had some smash hits too, you know? Of course, Netflix doesn't release their numbers, but I mean, we've all seen how much The Office has blown up since Netflix, 10 times bigger than it was when it was airing. And so my thing is, that already has a lot of pressure. And if there was anyone to rise to the occasion, I think it would be Greg Daniels. But I think Steve Carell kind of wearing multiple hats, in this case, it didn't really suit him, because what I felt about his performance as General Naird it was a little culmination of everything. It was a little Michael Scott sometimes. It was, you know, a little 40-year-old version. It was a little even that crazy guy from Anchorman, I forget his name.
Rick Tamlin.
But it just didn't feel like it was Naird. It never felt like the person I was supposed to be watching. And I just wonder if a lot of this is that production stress, you know? That's what kind of keeps.
That's a great point, Chris. And I think I know we're going to probably leave it to the end in regards to season 2, but I think that might be a angle that they might take less off of his plate and just focus more on the character. And also, we were talking about, you know, briefly, Joe was talking about as far as like a season 2 progression. I think we're going to probably see some more added characters be added to the mix. And I think a show like this, why I like maybe episodes 7 and 8, it's the pairing, right? Like I think of The Office was one of my favorite shows of all time. It's the pairing of the Office characters, Jim and Pam, you know, Michael and whoever he's dating at the time, whether it be, I can't even think of his love interests, but it's like pairing, right? So I think that the show found a hard time finding who fits with who. Like I know you mentioned, what's the gentleman's name? The Asian actor.
Jimmy O Yang.
I couldn't get Fantasy Island out of my mind because I thought he was terrible in that movie. So I just was like, every time he was on the screen, I just like kept thinking of that film. But I thought that they were trying to make him and Angela Ali like a thing, a couple, which they did not have chemistry at all to me. Yeah. So I think they need to find different pairing to make the show a little bit more authentic. Like I thought Steve Carell, like Mark and his daughter had some sentiment moments and his new love interest. There's potential there. But again, I think they just need to find the right pairing.
Exactly. And I'm actually glad that you brought that up because, first of all, like I just want to say, I actually thought that Jimmy O Yang was still one of the funniest parts, only because like it was just nice seeing like such a polar
Island out of my mind.
That's the thing. I'm with you stay Fantasy Island. For me, he'll always be Jin Yang from Silicon Valley. Like that's the first thing I'm always going to come to with him.
I gotta say, I'm so glad I saw Silicon Valley before Fantasy Island, or else I'd be suffering right there with you guys,
But yeah, it was so funny because it was almost kind of, for my personal take with that, it was almost kind of like Tawny Newsome was kind of leaning into like that typical like cliched romance angle, but he was almost like playing against it where he's like, yeah, I'm not into you, you know? And so I thought that was kind of funny, but I'm actually glad that you brought that up because that kind of plays into stigma that Greg Daniels has developed that we touched on a little bit with kind of the idea of Greg Daniels' first seasons, right? Which is that Greg Daniels shows, you know, he got to start writing for both The Simpsons and then King of the Hill. And then obviously he made his live action debut with The Office. Again, the whole thing is that Greg Daniels' first seasons, for whatever reason, they usually tend to be very weak, but he always manages to evolve it to a point where the show, A, gains an identity of its own, and B, usually becomes really well liked and really universally beloved, you know, because like you were saying, Elliot, The Office, that started off like the first season, and you're right, now that I think about it, that is why that first season to me feels so bizarre and all over the place, because it is directly trying to riff the British Office. But there's one thing I've learned is that British humor and American humor, two different things. It's a reason why there's a reason why every single British remake, like The Office is The Office and Shameless are the only two like successful American remakes of British shows. Like they tried it with Skins, they failed miserably. I don't think anyone here has watched the American version of Being Human, but it's not worth talking about. Even though that show was that show was my introduction to Sam Witwer, and then I found out that he was the voice of Darth Maul, and I'm like, okay, my life is complete. But
he also was Doomsday on Smallville.
That too. But yeah, it's interesting because like, I guess like, how do we talk about the fact that like Greg Daniels, like that's the thing we were saying, first season of Office, I hated it. First season of Parks and Rec, not as awful in hindsight, but like that show definitely to me didn't really hit its stride until midway through season 2. Ironically enough, when Louis C.K. came in, but that's a whole different story. Then that first season and then this first season of Space Force now, it's like it is very bizarre. It is very tonally inconsistent. It definitely feels like they're trying to like mix and match certain characters in order to see who goes well together. They're trying to be this satire, but at the same time, they're having like typical juvenile like jokes that you would find on NBC shows. You know, like it really is kind of all over the place. But I still think that the seeds are there for this to maybe become another. Like, I'm not going to say a great show because I personally still think that Netflix has yet to make a great show. They've had a couple of good shows with some like kind of odd things, but it's always, to me, the thing about Netflix shows is that it's always kind of been accidental success. You know, House of Cards, that was their first show. Stranger Things, that kind of blew up out of nowhere. You know, to me, still the only great Netflix original that I've seen has been BoJack Horseman. But yeah, so I guess the thing that I'm trying to get at here is, even though I think we've all made it clear now that we were not fans of this first season, do you guys think that this show has the potential to become good going forward and then potentially after that maybe even great?
So I'll make it quick. I think the show has a lot of growing up to do, in the sense that it still feels like a teenager who one week is like wearing like skate shoes and the next week is like, going out and buying like American Eagle or Hollister. Like maybe that's just me being a little too open and honest right now.
I was about to say, I'm like, way to clue us into your personal life there.
It just doesn't know what it wants to be. And in the worst way, it's doing that in the public eye, almost like a child actor who like goes through it really bad, where you feel bad for it because you love the people involved and it's young. You know what I mean? It's young. And so you don't want to watch something young suffer, especially publicly, but it's definitely got a lot of growing up to do, because I did not even remotely feel how we could get from episode 2 to episode 10, but yet we got there,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it was a slow pace too.
I'm with you. I'm worried about the show. I don't know that there's much to go on, because I think that when you have a first season where you focus on a monkey in episode 2, that you are probably like out there with your ideas and don't have a coherent focus. But going back to the whole writing and everything, Steve Carell, the only episode that he wrote was the first episode, the premiere episode. And I don't know that I would say that that's part of the problem, because I think that he wrote 2 of the funniest episodes of The Office. Casino Night, which was a very big episode for The Office, and then Survivor Man, which was just absolutely hilarious, and it was basically him the whole time.
Yeah, Survivor Man was good.
Yeah, so, and I just wonder if when it comes to creator here, if he spread himself a little too thin, because he also at the same time was developing Upload for Amazon. And Upload is an odd show, but it's charming and the character development is great, and it's a show that I really, really liked a lot more than I expected to. Quite the opposite of Space Force. So I wonder if it was just kind of spreading yourself a little too thin.
Oh, thanks for bringing up Mindhunter. The only problem with that is that only 2 seasons, and it's probably not coming back. And to me, I'm like, I need more than 2 seasons for something to be great. I need it. Like, I'm dying up here, but that was only 2 seasons.
It's got to prove itself. I agree with you.
It needs time. Like that. To me, like 2 seasons, that's not a TV show to me. At best, it's an extended movie, but that's not like a TV show to me.
I do want to hear what Elliot has to say about all this, but then I kind of have a question that I want to pose to you guys as well. But Elliot, first, please.
Well, yeah, as far as season 2 goes, I mean, of course, things can always get better. I think something that is a little bit different from Greg Daniels and this new approach of streaming compared to Parks and Rec and The Office. The first seasons of those shows were 6 episodes. They were television network shows. And within that week-to-week basis, not saying that they reshot episodes but you can get a grasp from the audience of like, oh, people like Jim, people like Dwight, people like, the Pawnee Crew and all that stuff. So this is a little bit of a different scenario with it. They had to put all of the episodes out at once, so they didn't really have the time to kind of maybe shift who the audience likes more. So I think that's the benefit of this season 1 until season 2. They're going to take in all the inventory about, hey, Steve Carell, you need to lose that accent. Hey, we need to bring in, because they don't have, again, they don't want to retread the same steps of The Office and Parks and Rec, but there is a little bit of rinse repeat. Who's going to be the, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Pratt love interest? Because I don't think that Diana Silvers and that Duncan kid, I don't see them. I mean, who knows? Because I think that's what they were trying to do, was she's kind of awkward and weird like Aubrey Plaza's character, and he's kind of silly and dumb like Chris Pratt, and they kind of grew into who we love them to be in Parks and Rec. So there is that potentiality of things getting better, but I think they, again, we just kind of mentioned, I think Steve Carell maybe needs to take the reins off of maybe writing and producing and just really focus on the character, and maybe get some additional characters, kind of take some of the slots of some characters that we can maybe gravitate towards and like a little bit more. So there's always, I think that there is a lot of potential for season 2 to get a lot better than what we got from this season. So it only goes up from here, right?
I was about to say, like, people love The Office season 2, and Parks and Rec was a little bit different, because Parks and Rec, I feel like, didn't really hit its stride until season 3, but there are still some really funny episodes for me in season 2. It's funny that you mentioned the Diana Silvers character, because like I know a lot of people weren't the biggest fan of her, but me, I'm like, she was kind of one of my favorite characters, because like throughout the entire time she was just like kind of like reacting to everyone else's nonsense, and whenever she kind of just like went off on her own, I'm like, okay, so she's like kind of an intelligent character. Actually, the only time I didn't like her was whenever they tried to like make her like the typical daughter. It's like, oh, I hate you, Dad, because you're never around. That's what I was like. Okay, the minute that they got into the cliche thing, and also kind of found it funny And again, this was probably another problem with the show, but I kind of found it funny how they kept trying to like pair her up with different guys, right? They first had her with that Russian guy who was so clearly a spy guy, and then he just went away. Like, he just
that's what I was gonna say.
And then never came back. And then she's with that dumb jock guy from Alabama, and I'm like, what are they trying to do here? Like, what is this? Like, this is not even close. Like, the beauty of April and Andy is if we're just using that example, you know, kind of bouncing off the Jim and Pam thing, right? And like kind of how they've been able to play around with that is that the Jim and Pam thing that was built up for so many years that it was satisfying once it finally happened. The April and Andy, the beauty of that is that it kind of just happened on a whim, right? April and Andy were dating for like 5 minutes. They had one argument and then they were married. And then you kind of had the rest of the show to like deal with them as a couple, as them like being this oddball couple, and it just worked. And it's like, it's kind of like they're trying to figure out like what the next romance is going to be. Like I said, you got the daughter, you got Jin Yang and Tawny Newsome, and I'm like, what is the romance here? It's funny because for a minute there, I thought that they were going to like start to finally hint at like some potentially like underlying homosexual tones with especially with when Steve Carell and John Malkovich are shopping for that tie together. I'm like, oh wait, are we gonna go in this direction? And then they never do. I'm like, okay, great. So way to prove that you're actually not taking brave and new steps and going in bold new directions. But
isn't that ironic considering we're talking about space exploration,
right?
And that's the thing, dude. This show never took off for me because it just played it so close to the belt. No, I know. I'm sorry, Joe. It came to mind. But
which belt?
Like,
oh,
true. The Milky Way, is that a belt? I don't know. I'm out of my realm here. And obviously, so were Greg Daniels and Steve Carell, because the thing is, like, you had all these actors who have all of these, like we've been saying, you know, tried and true performances. They're fan favorites, and they are brilliant in their own right. But I felt like you're right. We were seeing a dumber version of what's his name on Parks and Rec? Ben Schwartz character.
Oh, John Ralphio.
John Ralphio. I felt like I'm not too familiar with John Malkovich, but I also didn't think he was a brilliant straight man. I think being a straight man is a pretty easy thing to do. So he passed, right? It's a pass fail. But if it was a grade, I think, you know, he just skimmed by. I think there's a lot of improvement there. And I just don't think like anyone really complimented the next person. Like we were talking about, like Tammy Newsome and Jimmy O Yang, like their little friendship relationship. What is it? I don't even know right now what it was, if she was even trying to put the moves on him, if she wasn't, because it was just so unclear. And I'm talking about, like, you know, the set of Carell and Malkovich, Newsome and Oyang, because we spent like a lot of time with them together, and I'm still confused. I think being a fan of all these people, I'm gonna obviously watch season 2, but it's on very thin ice for me. Because it's just like, I wanted to come in tonight saying things like, okay, but there's potential. But the more I think about it, since I finished it a few days ago, the more I think this is the wrong way to, you know, take a big budget and just flex your cast in advance. Like, I think if we would have known less about this thing going forward, it would have been more forgiven. But because they were so strong on their heels going into it with the marketing, with the whole, like, you know, sending it out early to get the reviews and thinking like Nerdist.com and, you know, Red Letter Media, all these guys were gonna like love this thing, and it completely just bit them in the butt, you know. Like, they kind of shot themselves in the foot over and over again. I just can't. I don't know if I'm even making sense, because I'm honestly, like, I was passionate about this thing. I love these creators. I love these actors. Like, I needed a pick me up in this time, and I did not get one. You know.
Well, and I do want to just mention real quick that the whole season 2 thing, it's not official. So just looking at a few things that were posted an hour ago, Greg Daniels has talked about how they've started preliminary work on what a season 2 would look like, and they want to have a few more seasons, but Netflix has yet to renew it.
Yeah. Plus, nobody knows what's going to happen once the new COVID procedures are put in place, and whether productions.
That's a good point too.
Be able to be a thing. That is something that a lot of people have to consider.
It's also an expensive show, right? Like, because
it's a big budget.
Of these. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not convinced.
That's the thing I wanted to talk about. Well, first off, just bouncing it back to Malkovich. I think the problem with Malkovich comes from the fact that, yes, he is playing it straight, and I think he does his part beautifully. The problem is, what does a straight man need to bounce off of? It needs an overly bombastic character. And the problem is, to me, Carell is not doing a good enough job playing the overly bombastic part. It's like, again, he's because it's too inconsistent of a character. He's Michael Scott at points, and then at other points he's like holding it way too close to the vest. You know, like, I see the Michael Scott intonations pop up, but like when Malkovich, rightfully so, finally goes nuts and starts yelling at him in the last couple seasons, which I've been waiting for. I'm like, okay, we need more of this then for like the last couple. It's almost like the parts were reversed, where I almost feel like Steve Carell would have been better off as the straight man, and Malkovich would have been better off going overly bombastic, because Malkovich has proved himself as an actor that he can hit all sorts of ranges when he needs to. He can hit subtle and he can hit over the top. You know, some of my favorite John Malkovich performances have been over the top. Just look at Con Air. But back to the budget, yeah, and that's probably, I think, is another big part of why this show was such a disappointment, is because you could tell, you know, like Netflix, I've talked at nauseam about how I'm not the biggest fan of Netflix's production because it all looks very homogenous and it all looks very, very similar. But like, this was a show you could tell had money put into it. Like, the sets, I feel like, are even kind of more elaborate than the usual Netflix sets. I feel like they were taking a hint from Amazon's book with like kind of how they were using the camera movement. Like, the shots felt more dynamic. Like, the visuals budget is off the chain. Like, those visuals, those CG visuals, they were still a little bit CG, like with the monkey and the dog, but they looked good. Like, I was shocked that with how much money this show got. Like, that just shows the amount of goodwill that Greg Daniels has built up. So I think this is another big thing, you know, because we've been led to assume we've been led to assume by most movies that, you know, more money means more quality. But if there's anything I feel like that a lot of the more recent big budget blockbusters have shown us, it's that big budgets do not always necessarily equal good quality, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, Dom, 100% could not agree with you more. And so you kind of talking about Malkovich and really dissecting him like that makes me think about something I kind of thought while I was watching through the first episode, and that scene where they have Steve Carell mouthing Kokomo, and then he kind of starts singing it and the music comes over.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that could have been really cool if they had done more of those type of sing-alongs. Like, he's into the oldies, he goes to the oldies to relax, he has a stressful job. But I remember thinking instead, when it first came around, where was that scene in the beginning of him and his family driving in the car and him tossing in a CD of the oldies? Where was the establishment?
Or even the flashback a couple episodes later to when he's in his car with the family with it. I'm like, where the hell was that in the first episode? That's like prime establishment material right there.
Yeah, and look, Lost just had its anniversary, and I hate to talk ill of it, but they did a lot of what Lost did, where they threw a lot of questions and they threw a lot of things at you, but they didn't quite tell you why or how they got there. And it gets frustrating, especially in a show like this that can't really ride on the J.J. Abrams mystery box heels.
Right, they're not intriguing questions.
Yeah,
like, I don't care.
And also, again, this is not the type of a show that warrants those types of questions. Like, I'm sorry, they're not trapped on a mystery island that may or may not be purgatory. They're in the middle of Colorado trying to put people in space. Like, and it's a goofy workplace comedy the rest of the time. Like, it's not the type of show that warrants those types of questions.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of use Lost as a roundabout way to like sort of paint the feelings that I have of it doesn't warrant the I shouldn't be confused. This is a simpler format, and let alone this is something Greg Daniels has done time and time again. Yeah, there's a bit of a challenge here because it is a workplace comedy, but not many people work in top secret classified environments.
Right.
So it
makes it a little bit. It makes it a little bit less relatable too. Also,
yeah, that's true. So they had to work a little harder to make a show about the characters, pull you in and invest you. But when I saw what could have been a really charming and lovable characteristic in Naird just be something I was confused about and asking myself where this is coming from, like 20 minutes into episode 1, I knew we were in for issues. Elliot, man, I got to throw it to you, dude, because you've been a little quiet here. Like, what's your take on all this that we're saying, bro?
Well, again, I think that it was just a matter of just bad pairing and a little bit too little, too late in regards to picking up momentum kind of in the last 2 or 3 episodes. But again, I think that the show needs, I would not be surprised if they do get a season 2, that they end up pulling from some famous actor or some popular character from The Office or a Nick Offerman from Parks and Rec. I feel like they're going to bring someone of that caliber to kind of mix it up a little bit. And who knows, a season 2, again, it is Space Force, but if we go off of how the season ended, I don't think Mark's going to have a job when he gets back, committing treason, essentially. So I wouldn't be surprised if they change up the show to a drastic degree and add some more grounded characters and maybe pull the budget back and not explore space so much and just explore focus on one thing, family drama in a comedy workspace. I think that might just focus on those 2 things instead of for the satire and the political satire and all that stuff. So I think they're going to probably pull in a couple more big name cast members. I think Lisa Kudrow, if she is out of jail, I don't know if she's going to be out of jail for most of next season if it gets there, but having another, someone mix in her, and I wouldn't be surprised too. They didn't really play on it too much, but I did like the moments with Mark Nard and the construction lady. I can't think of her character's name. There was some funny moments, and you can see that there was a little bit more chemistry amongst them and could be more chemistry in the future. So I think, again, just moving forward, I wouldn't be surprised if they mix up the scenario, mix up the situation, location, bring in, like I said, Nick Offerman, or, some week, because there were some cameos, because I used to watch, well, not used to, I still watch today. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Caitlin
Olsen.
Caitlin Olsen. They had a lot of different cameos. Yeah. So I think season 2 is going to throw in some more funnier characters and some wacky characters to kind of balance the show out.
Yeah, it's what's it called? Yeah, maybe first off, maybe they'll actually explain, why Lisa Kudrow was in jail. But also, again, I think what happened is that, if I'm just offering my personal stance on, is that they were trying to do this mix again between satire and workplace comedy. But I feel like the problem is that they kind of established that with Parks and Rec, they were willing to go more zany. And I know that's also a big part of the reason why The Good Place succeeded. The Good Place, I know, was not created by, I don't think Greg Daniels was involved in that show, but I know that show had a lot of references and Easter eggs poking back to Parks and Rec. And I feel like the next logical step was to go even zanier and crazier, do it full on dark satire, like In the Loop, like a Succession, like all this stuff that Armando Iannucci and his writers have been involved in. And it's almost like they were backtracking, right? And the straight edge nature of it really, really hurt it, because it's in certain of those moments, like you were saying, Chris, with where he starts singing Coco, but the song, I feel like that should have been after one of the most crazy, insane arguments, and he's just literally doing that to de-stress, and then that would make sense. But it's just
that's my favorite scene of the entire show.
Yeah, and then it's he got into a few fights with his very incompetent secretary, which it's okay, well, I get it's I hate it when shows try to make excuses.
Quick question: was this show MA? I couldn't remember. They were cursing, right?
They were cursing. They were cursing a lot. They were dropping F-bombs like crazy on this.
They said some stuff. Yeah, they definitely said some stuff.
Yeah, but I hate it. I hate it when shows try to play it both ways, where it's the characters that are clearly morons, right? That are very clearly stupid and should not have the positions that they do. Mm-hmm. But then they also try to say, oh no, but these guys are efficient and these guys are the best possible things. It's no, I'm sorry. Yeah. I sat through that one too many times. It's already a trend that's hard enough to pull off, and only a few people have pulled it off. It's no, either play it straight-laced and have them be actually good at their job while also having some flaws, or have it be full-on satire where they're complete idiots, they constantly screw up, and the whole point is that we're supposed to be terrified because the people at this level of power are dumber than we are, But trying to play it down the middle didn't work for me, personally.
Did not work. And the reason I keep going back to that Kokomo scene is because it was the trailer scene, and it actually wasn't ruined, it had impact, but it also made me sad because, like I said, it was just so out of place. And if something feels out of place in the first episode, 20 minutes in, that's scary. But I mean, you guys are a little more in tune with this part of the world, so I'd be curious to get what you think. Obviously, I have an opinion, but you guys kind of have been studying this what I'm about to bring up a little more than me. I know that for a fact. So this is doing terrible with the critics in reviews, but this is doing amazing with audiences, just the regular modern day people. So
and I could have called that from the minute the trailer came out.
How do you think Netflix reacts to that? I guess I had read something that season 2 is coming, but obviously it wasn't the most correct, and who really knows right now where they're at with this. Netflix is so secretive, and that's kind of why I'm wondering, how do you think Netflix is going to react to critically hated, but audiences really like it seems?
I personally think that it's the same mindset that Disney has right now, which is that they don't care about the quality anymore. They just want to pump out something. They just want to keep pumping out things until it's a hit. That's why I've been saying this for a while now, why Netflix's programming seems to be so disposable, because it is. They keep pumping stuff out until it's a hit, and they don't care about the quality.
Would you call this a hit?
It's I think it's still too soon to be considered a hit. It's because it only debuted a week ago, but it's definitely like I said, it's on their charter. People are talking about it, and as far as the enjoyment goes, if you're talking about audience versus critics, yeah, obviously, we like to think, I know people love to talk and be like, oh, what do critics know? And nobody really needs critics now that the internet is a thing. And I think there is some truth to that, but like I said, I still think there was merit to critics, because obviously critics look at things in different ways than regular audience members do. But the problem is, at the end of the day, what are you making this stuff for? You're making it for consumers because your goal is to make money. And if the consumer, that's why, again, we can talk all the live long day about quality over quantity, but at the end of the day, the thing that makes the biggest buck, that makes the biggest noise, is going to get the most attention. So that's just my stance on it.
Well, I'll pose this too. This is I would love to get you guys' thoughts on just, I guess, comedies and just in general. Just thinking of the landscape of comedy, whether it be in theaters, whether it be on TV shows. I mean, what right now is like a big outside of, It's Sunny in Philadelphia, which got renewed for its 15th season, which is insane, which is crazy. I love that because I love that show. But like, is it more of a greater, like, obviously we know comedy is subjective, but we also know the conversation in regards to pushing the boundaries of comedy is very, very difficult in today's culture, whether, being inappropriate comments or insensitive comments. So it's just like, do comedies really, I hate to say it because I love comedy. I love to laugh. I love to enjoy characters that are funny, but can comedies sustain in today's society?
I think new comedies can if they play it the right way. I don't know that a straight comedy as a television show is going to make it anymore. Of course, It's Always Sunny is kind of an anomaly because it's going into its 15th season. It was just renewed for, which is insane. But when you think about the time that first came out, you were back in the Office days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Office
the same year as the Office,
right? And the Office would never work today.
No.
But
honestly, I'm surprised Sunny is still on television. Seriously,
I totally am too.
They still
very
take those
off
kind
the
of
rails.
risks? I've tuned out. Okay,
they do. There are still
right.
a lot of things that I'm surprised are still on television.
And apparently, the first episode of next season is about coronavirus. We already know that. So, but like you look at a show like Dead to Me, which isn't a straight comedy, but it has a lot of comedic elements, and it's a drama. It's a mystery. It gives us something new. It plays well. It unites two actresses that I think are really good together in that show. And you bring in James Marsden, who is like the traveling actor who's in like everything when you think about it. That works really well, right? Orange is the New Black had some comedy to it. There was a big, part of it was the comedic characters that were able to kind of interject and take down some of the dramatic elements. And that was a show that really critically and fan-wise did not deliver all the time. The ebbs and flows of that show were really crazy for Netflix. So I think this show continues on. Probably for at least one more season to give it a chance, because I think you're right with all of the people involved, and Netflix kind of is doing really well financially, so they'll be fine. But comedy wise, I mean, it's really hard when comedy got to a point where it was exciting because it was riffing on real life and it was satirical about real life. But we are in a position as a society right now, not to get too deep, where there is really nothing funny about anything that's going on.
Yeah.
Like 2020 is a hell of a year.
To say the least.
For all the wrong reasons,
Yeah.
Like I know Luke on here says it a lot. He's always like, what's next? What's June bringing? What's July bringing?
Right. Real life has become a bigger TV show than anything that's actually on TV right now.
Yeah, and so I think the only reason that a show like Always Sunny is successful, continues to be successful, is because it is mindless, and they established themselves 15 years ago when we were in a very different societal realm. Now it's, I don't know.
It's grandfathered in. It is 100%. And this kind of, I listen to a lot of Rogan, and I was recently listening to his episode with Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart had to apologize. He had said some things that he meant in comedy. He said those things in the form of comedy, but obviously, like what we're talking about right now, that fine line is only getting thinner. And like Joe Rogan and Kevin, they were just sort of talking about how they had to like take fear out of going on stage and performing, because there needs to be a reminder that it's just a joke. Obviously, though, you can't say certain jokes anymore, though, because we are past that. But we can't, creativity's got to change, I think, and I wonder if in the writer's room, Carell, Daniels, whoever else was writing this, I don't really know any other big names. No one comes to mind. I wonder, because it seems like there certainly could have been moments where they were like, oh, we would love to say this. Obviously, we don't mean it personally. It would be funny, but we can't say this anymore in this climate. And I wonder if that's part of why this show suffers. And I wonder if that's why, like, we're seeing more dramedies or more, comedy action films to sort of water down, like, what in, just last decade. Look at Community, look at The Office, look at, It's Always Sunny, which was a passing grade. And now is obviously, like we're saying, it's obvious Sunny got grandfathered in. I don't know how we sort of do this. I really don't know. But
it's tricky.
Oh no, Joe, you go, because like I said, mine is going to be another long tangent.
What?
I'm just letting you guys know in advance.
What? No. So I think what's kind of interesting though is that they do go there a little bit in this show. You have that whole that whole interaction where what's his name is talking, Fantasy Island guy is talking about Jimmy O Yang is talking about how he gets into these like chat rooms or he's online in these communities for like Asian men that like black women, and so they're starting to like push a little bit, but they just don't like everything else in the show. They don't take it.
It's brushed over.
They don't
and
see it through.
about it. Yeah. And my whole stance on the comedy situation is you're right. Like the whole the PC culture, everything has definitely, I think, been the biggest detriment to comedy. And I think it definitely hurt a lot. The fact that like the whole what jokes people could say versus not. But the thing is that the whole idea of kind of knowing what jokes won't work today was kind of already become a thing before the PC culture set. And I feel like that was just a thing of like common sense, right? I feel like it was a thing of where, to me, the comedians that kept bombing and weren't working were the ones that just lacked a lot of common sense, and I feel like a lot of the ones that we talked about, like, they kind of understand, like I said, it's a few exceptions here and there, like Kevin Hart, because that one, that special that he did, because I remember watching that special, was actually fairly recent, it still feels recent, even though it was like 10, 11 years ago, so like that was like walking a fine line, but for the most part, like, I still watch specials from like 10, 20, 30 years ago that still work. Like, yes, I get it, Delirious and Raw, you can never release those today, but like a lot of those jokes to me still work. No way. But like a lot of those jokes still work, but I think it's not. I think there's a bigger issue at play here, which is that, to me at least, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but what I found is that if you're talking, because It's Always Sunny, yes, is the anomaly in that it's the only live action comedy show that has been able to last that long, with 15 plus seasons. They're still going, they're still just as funny. But the animated comedy realm is no stranger to that. You got shows like Simpsons is past 30 seasons, King of American Dad, Family Guy, South Park, all these animated shows that go on for years and years, that have been going on like 20 plus 30 years. And I still know a lot of people who can still watch those shows and still be really entertained by them. But for me, at least, what checks me out of a lot of those shows is the fact that they're repetitive by nature. And that's not to say the subjects that they're talking about are repetitive, because they can't. The reason why they're still able to keep going is because they're able to incorporate new subjects of what's going on in today's world. But I'm talking about the actual feel of the show, because the problem that I noticed, and I noticed this first with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that was the first show that I noticed this with, is that it's a thing where they kind of they realize that they need to keep their audiences maintained, so they start falling on easy jokes and after easy jokes, and they don't really continue to take risks. Like I said, Joe, I hate to keep bringing this up, but I feel like the reason to me why Community stands out among so many of these other comedy shows is that even when that show was at its worst, which I will fully agree, the first 3 seasons, the last 3 seasons don't hold a candle to the first 3 seasons, but even when that show was at its worst, it was still trying to take bold new directions and actually try and develop and change its characters in natural ways. The thing for me that turned me off from Brooklyn Nine-Nine is the fact that, yes, they did try to actually develop and grow their characters over time, but the jokes that they were telling just weren't as funny for whatever reason. And I noticed that as early as season 4. And it's the same thing to me with a lot of the animated shows. And I feel like kind of now why you're seeing this big transition into kind of getting away from those safe comedy formulas that we know about and into, like you guys were saying, the dramedy, the buddy action film. Comedy, is a formula that they kind of like we're doing this new riff on, like with movies recently, like Central Intelligence and that movie that came out with Kumail Nanjiani last year, Stuber, like they were at the very least.
They Lovebirds, but
no, absolutely not. That, well, kind of with that movie, though. That's the thing, good. Like. Okay, agree to disagree, but you guys see what I mean? Like, I feel like the problem is that because again, the comedy genre has always been subjective, but I feel like the problem is that every other genre to me has found a way to grow and improve, not just with the times, but with the storytelling tropes that go into that genre. And comedy, I feel like, is one that has never really taken the risks. Like, there's always been the outliers, but as far as the mainstream one goes, they've never really taken the risks and really adjusted with the times. And that's why I feel like the comedies, yeah, you can still see some good ones here and there, but the great hits that are really interesting and subjective and transcend the genre are becoming fewer and fewer and far between. And that's why I feel like comedy as a genre is really falling by the wayside.
Yeah, comedy got lazy.
It really did. It really did. Like the term lazy, like that is a well-known term now.
It's just Sorry, go ahead, Elliot.
No, I would say it just makes me nervous for Coming to America 2 later this December.
Yeah.
I mean, I love.
Really
I don't know if you
worried.
guys saw Dolomite was my name, which I thought was a really good drama.
Great movie.
Agreed.
And I like the pairing of Eddie Murphy and the director who slipped my mind right now, who's going to be
Brewer
directing
from
Greg
Hustle
Brewer,
and
yeah.
Flow.
So I think that there's still hope there. But again, we talked about Delirious. I'm still, and I thought Eddie Murphy did a great job in that role. Like it was it made my top 10 last year. I love Dolomite's my name, but. Again, going back to this comedy conversation, can Eddie hit those beats with that character in Coming of America 2? But yeah, it's just comedy. I think you hit it right on the head, Dom, in regards to just it's a different space, different climate that we're in, and I think of Apple TV Plus, the first comedy to hit that platform. I haven't watched the show yet, but Central Park. But all of their other shows are dramas, action movies.
I tried to watch
the morning show.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know where comedy.
I tried to watch the first episode of that show, and I couldn't get through it because that was another weird tonal show. Like it was all over the place. Like it was 1 minute it's trying to be like an animated adult show, but a much more kid-friendly version. Like it kind of reminded me of some shows that I used, like some obscure shows that I used to watch back in the day. And then the next minute it's a musical, and it's like that show's really confusing. So
the thing about
comedy has not evolved with the times.
Yeah, one thing that sorry, Joe, I just want to hit, Yolo said something really cool, and before we get too far away from it, I kind of want to, Ricky Gervais kind of does have no fear, and he kind of doesn't care, but can you name one smash hit he's done in the past 10 years? Am I just blind to it? I
can name a few, but the problem is that none of his shows have ever been like hits. Like I think the last like big mainstream hit was The Office. Like he has all of his projects that he's done with Stephen Merchant, Warwick Davis. He had that show Extras on HBO. He had that show Derek on Channel 4, and now he's got Afterlife on Netflix. Like he's had shows that worked and were successes, but I don't think he ever hit like anything huge and mainstream.
Doesn't he have a show now that people are pretty excited about?
Afterlife, that show on Netflix.
Yeah.
I love that show, but for every person I know who likes it, there's at least like 10 more that are completely offended and turned off by the concept because it does poke fun at like a lot of like touchy topics.
Yeah, what is it? Can you explain it to me, Chris? Yeah, because I don't even know what the show is.
That is, I guess. Yeah, so the premise is that I forget his character's name, but Ricky Gervais kind of like is starting to just play himself and everything, and so he played himself essentially, but his wife, who he loved very much, the only thing in the world that he loved, he was a bitter guy before he met her, and after she unfortunately passes away from cancer, he becomes even more bitter, and he just keeps trying to take his life. In the I'm not going to spoil it, but in the first few episodes, and he keeps failing, and it's dark comedy. I mean, it's kind of like that laugh where you chuckle and then you think, whoa, should I laugh at this? Like that evil laugh feeling that like I definitely knew more and more of when I was younger, watching comedy and seeing shows, especially British television that I watched when I was younger. But even the British television seems to be getting more straight and narrow. So like, yeah, he's taking a risk, but I also think he's grandfathered in as that type guy.
100%. 100%.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if you can be a young guy, if you're not Greg Daniels, if you're not, Ricky Gervais, I don't think you can do that anymore. I also don't think that's a bad thing. But like, I think what we're all saying is we need to figure out where to push the envelope to next. Maybe not forward, but like what other lane do we jump into?
You gotta grow into it. I mean, you see successful comedians able to take their tone and take who we've grown to know them as and develop their comedy to kind of meet what is going on in the time. The ones that are not successful are the ones that go for the cheap jokes, the lazy jokes, the race-based, the gay jokes, the whatever it may be. And there's a time and place for everything, and I don't know that all comedians figure that out. So when you're looking at shows like The Office, which was, I think when it came out, was a real anomaly in terms of the type of show that it was, and ultimately the success that it had. It wasn't a success the first 2 seasons. They didn't think they were going to make it to season 2, let alone season 3. Then they finally were like, all right, we have some job security. But every show after that tried mirroring that. Whereas before that, every show before that tried mirroring Friends and, Will and Grace and things like that. So comedy and shows evolve. I think we also are in a time where things are evolving much faster. And, society is taking a lot of turns in faster ways, 2020, that maybe it hasn't in the past. And you just we need smarter comedy. And that's what has always worked. Smarter comedy is new comedy. Going back to the same old jokes, the same old easy sells is not going to speak to everyone. And especially as this is getting more like preachy, but especially as each generation that comes up now is more and more activist and more involved in everything that's going on, they're not going to enjoy the same old cheap thrills of a joke that, you know, our parents are, or
not to mention the fact that the up and coming generations are a lot more media aware because they've all grown up like with iPads, you know, like, and that's again a problem that creators are obviously running into, you know, with capturing people's attention spans. But if anything, I feel like it's by trying to take more risks, it's almost like they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot, right? Because I'm seeing all of these episodes, these comedy episodes that are like 30, 35 minutes long. And I'm like, bro, with the reason why those NBC I'm telling you, a big reason why a lot of those NBC shows work and go by so well and are binged so quickly is because NBC knew how to do timing. They had that shit tight. Like, without commercials, 20 to 21 minutes each, and they never went over, and they all flowed, and everything worked. Everything hit the beats that they needed to, and it felt like systematic. There was a rhythm to it, you know, and it allowed for easy binging, you know. But once you start to let those jokes linger on a little bit too long, it really messes with your flow, and it can distract people, you know. And especially now, in a time and place where audiences are more media aware, more media sensitive, and more hyperactive, and just unable to focus, even more so than ever. You know, that is a problem. You know, you need to nail your tone, and you need to have a pace that you stick to, you know, and this kind of wavering all over the place is dangerous ground to be walking on.
Can I throw a wrench in all this, though? A show that was around in the early 2000s that just came back and is raunchy and pushes the envelope is Reno 911. If you guys are familiar with Reno 911.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. I watched a couple episodes.
Yeah,
they're
so
back.
Reno 911 is back on Quibi.
There
you go.
But when you watch it, it is in a lot of ways more raunchy, more pushing the envelope than it was in the past. And it works. I mean, I had the free version or free trial. There it is.
3-year free trial. You understand their service.
Yeah, because that's the only way that Quibi will actually get people to watch their stuff.
It was awesome. I love that show. And it's gotten me to go back and revisit the previous ones or the previous seasons. So that's a show that is still following the same old script of what they did in the past and being successful. So maybe it's just because nobody's watching Quibi, but it works.
Yeah, I think of shows like Atlanta on FX. I think that's another platform that has a little I haven't watched Dickie, but I know that people say that Dickie's a really good show.
Yeah, I've watched the first 2 episodes. It's pretty good so far from what
I finished it because I'm a fan of his, and I would say that if you can get past basically you just have to take it for what it is, and if you can accept that, you're gonna love it. But it's not the greatest thing ever. But it's fun and it's entertaining. Better than Space Force.
I think of even Succession, even though it's not a straight up comedy, but I think that the situations that family is in, Succession, I think does a good job of dark comedy, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think HBO and FX are probably right now the 2 of the only platforms I can see consistent comedy, on those platforms.
Yep. Because they know who to work with, because they know who's talented, unlike Netflix, who just keeps throwing shit at the wall in order to see what lands. HBO knows what works. They know what people work. And Joe, just you wait. And what's it called? And they know how to land tone and timing, and they know how to make good stories. Netflix, again, like, it's been my problem with them since day one. They are too all over the place. They cannot pick and that's fine. That's not their business model, right? Their whole thing that they started with is they started selling DVDs. It's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing as Amazon, but Amazon's better off because I think they're more financially fiscal, and because Amazon doesn't place all of its stock into media, which is something that Netflix does. But Netflix just throws stuff all over the place. It allows for some really good. It's kind of like
they're 2 very different companies.
Yeah, it's kind of
but they have their own streaming.
But I guess the best comparison that I can think of is that it's kind of like A24 versus a Neon situation. Where A24, you kind of know what you're gonna get. And it, for the most part, is always going to be quality. There's a few stinkers, but for the most part, you know what you're going to get, and it's always going to be different and unique, right? They're the HBO/FXs because they take risks, but they also know who to trust with their, in terms of who's going to be the most creative, the most risk, but also give us the best possible product. Netflix is like the Neon, where they are throwing out a lot of stuff, and not all of it works. But when it does, it works, you know. And Neon's had some freaking great movies. They just got a Best Picture nomination, you know, and now they're teaming up with Hulu for stuff. But that's kind of like the comparison. But I think Netflix, it's a lot more inconsistent because Netflix is also, I think, which is a mistake, I think. Netflix is trying to play that game of because they're so popular and so well known, they're trying to please everyone. And that, if there's one thing I've learned, if there's one thing that today's media sphere is showing, is that trying to please everyone is a doomed experiment. Like there's a reason why, like Game of Thrones, I feel like was the last big thing that really was watched by everyone, and look how that turned out. Like to me, the way that shows succeed now is they find their niche and they stick with it.
I will say that just to kind of play devil's advocate, we're looking at streaming is completely different from HBO, which is a premium service. I think that approach that Netflix is doing, even though we might not like the dumping bunch of stuff out, there is the audience out there, that there is so many people on Netflix that people ate up Space Force, people ate up the stuff so there is that approach to it, that there is such a huge audience for Netflix. Again, the generations growing up with their iPads and their iPhones, and that's kind of their, you know, there is something for everyone out there for Netflix's, you know, their kind of their approach to the quantity over quality type of situation. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation, guys. Definitely. I was thinking that this was the point I was trying to make. I totally forgot, but yeah, I'll try to remember what I was going to say in regards to. Let's say I wouldn't be surprised in the next couple of years, especially with Netflix, a Judd Apatow making a show potentially. I think of maybe a Greta Gerwig maybe having a TV show.
100%. 100%.
So I see those creators, especially with the landscape of films right now and theatrical things. A lot of these more well-known directors might dabble into the TV show realm, and we might get some more, you know, original comedies on Netflix and HBO Max and all that different stuff.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, just look at what Damien Chazelle did most recently. You know, he directed the first 2 episodes of The Eddie, and he's also got that Apple TV show. I think that if I'm just throwing out my 2 cents on the future of where this is going to go before we start to wrap things up, it's that I think that you'll see I think it's going to be a situation where you have the people who will be exclusively filmed. You'll still have the people who will be exclusively TV. But similar to how actors, you know, obviously, you know, it was a thing where back in the day you couldn't do TV and then jump to film. Like, it was unheard. It was unheard of, right? There were like 2 people that did it. It was like Bruce Willis and George Clooney, and were like the only 2 people that did it, right? But on that, like, movie was a movie and TV was TV. But now it's like they're basically interchangeable, you know, at this point. And I feel like you kind of already have been seeing that. I feel like David Fincher was the first big one to do it. But the thing is, everybody forgets David Fincher didn't create House of Cards. His just directorial style was just so apparent with that people almost like didn't even realize that he had left when he did, until like that show started getting bad. But I feel like that's something you're going to start to see with a lot of these creators, you know, like you're going to start to see like the big part of the reason why Space Force worked is not just because of Steve Carell and the cast, but because, you know, Greg Daniels, he's become enough of a personality now that people know him from The Office and Parks and Rec. And you're going to start to see that situation where, you know, obviously the idea of show running is much different than directing a movie, but you're going to start to see like guys who are like, you know, this TV show, you know, like from Greta Gerwig, from Noah Baumbach, you know, like if Tarantino kind of does the jump to TV, like a lot of people predict, you're going to see like from the next big thing from Quentin Tarantino, you know, when you're going to start to see that association with streaming. And you're also, I feel like you're going to also start to see the transition really fully into just doing these like extended movies, but as like 4 or 5 episode TV shows.
Yeah, no, Dom, I couldn't agree more. And I think still, though, I think that transitioning to anything new, even if you're a Tarantino, even if you're, you know, a Noah Baumbach, like you still have to execute it, which is clearly what did not happen with Space Force.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know, going back to allude to Carell being more than just an actor, more than just like a compelling face in this one. But I do kind of want to like run this by you guys before we get out of here, because I feel like comedy is where horror was not too long ago, where it was really in a bad place. And
for real.
did not look like there was any hope for it. And you know, look at you know, How I Met Your Mother. Before I knew anything, that was one of my favorite shows. But
that is a horror.
Yeah, right. Right.
Well, I mean,
and that humor, some of that humor is still funny, but God, oh man, you want to talk about a show that does not hold up.
Yeah, exactly. It does not hold up, and that's why I bring it up, because before I had like this like knowledge that I have now, where I can just, you know, pull references left and right about TV shows and comedy specifically, and I am pretty good at that. No, I'm just kidding. But what I'm trying to say
we're talking
is,
about it in the moment.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is like, that show was a Friends clone and it worked in the moment, but it's really not looked back on with that much fondness. I mean, the community, the love for it, in my opinion, keeps dwindling day by day. And this is a show that I was ride or die for.
I disagree
so
on that. I disagree on that.
Wait,
I'm
which
telling
show?
you. How I Met Your Mother.
Oh,
you were
I
right.
thought you were talking about Community, and I'm like, I think the love for Community is stronger now than it ever was.
No, I'm talking about How I Met Your Mother. You said Community, not me.
All right.
You always say Community.
That one's, you're right. That one's on me. I'll take the fault for
I'm
that.
just saying that, like, how comedy sort of, like, you know, we got to stop borrowing from what we already have, and we need to find a new direction like horror did. Because if you look at like How I Met Your Mother, in the time it was a smash hit, but I think, you know, and a lot of people kind of don't look back on it with fondness, in my opinion. You know, it's very mixed, whereas the time it was airing, it was crushing and it was killer, and everyone wanted to see what the misadventures of Ted Mosby and the gang were. But and now we're just getting like these repeats, and every time you water something down, you end up with Space Force. You know, I feel like this is a crazy way to get to where I was saying, because we got interrupted with Joe McHale and his little show somewhere along there. But I mean, am I making sense, guys? Do you agree? Do you disagree with that comparison?
I agree with that 100%. I agree with that 100%. Like, I'm actually
want to make sure I got there.
No, I'm really glad you brought up that point about horror, because
a long journey.
Oh man, that was so spot on. It to quote Billy Eichner from Parks and Rec, that was so spot on. It was scary. I need to go take a nap for 45 minutes. No, an hour, a full hour. That was a little bit of a tangent, but
a full hour.
Great. He gave that show a shot in the arm, to quote Dan
Billy
Burrow.
Eichner.
He's great.
Before we get out of here, will you guys watch season 2? Or if
yeah, yeah, I'll be there. I mean, as you said up top, I review a little bit of everything, so I'll just watch it just by default. But I am interested to see where they go with the season 2 and who they cast to bring into it, and if they switch up the scenario. You know, maybe they, I don't know, recast some people. I mean, it'll be unprecedented for them to recast Steve Carell, but I mean, you know, that's just, you know, my imagination going. But I would be interested to see what they do with a season 2 and see where it goes, and hopefully iron out the kinks and focus on the show a little bit more and have more to say and be funny, which I think is the point.
Yeah, the key word, actually funny.
Yeah. What about you, Joe? I didn't quite catch what you said there.
I didn't say anything, but now I will. Punchy tonight. It's been a long week.
I like it. No, I get
emotions
it.
are high. No, so I'm bored with the show. I was bored with the show in the first episode. I was bored with the show in the 10th episode. But I'll likely watch it because I don't like starting something in terms of TV and not finishing it. I like to see where it goes. I've mentioned that on other streams about, you know, when you know it's going to be a 3-movie arc or whatever, I want to see the whole story play through. So I do want to see that. I do believe that they don't know where they're going right now. And I think they have some ideas, and they probably are going to retool some things. So I do think that if we do get a season 2, it's going to be different. But like all that to say, I need something that keeps my attention, because I've kind of staked out my corner of Instagram as the movie guy. So going to television is not necessarily something that. Oh, I froze again, didn't I?
We can still hear you.
We can still hear you.
Yeah. No, we can't.
Now we can't. Come on.
I'm back.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Where did I end?
Movie guy.
So
I
kind of, staked out my corner of Instagram as being the movie guy. So for me to spend time watching TV shows now, it never was this way before, but I need to be gripped by it. Like I want to be in on it. I've never had a Netflix show that took me this long to get through it.
Yeah.
And it's a 32 to 38 minute episode each time. I was struggling, absolutely struggling. And so I'll watch it. I'm not going to be happy about it, but I'll watch it.
Was I the only one that sat through the whole thing? I watched all 10 episodes.
I watched the whole thing.
I watched the whole thing.
What?
Oh, not in one.
Crazy, Elliot.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's what I'm talking about. This guy is dedicated.
I could not do it.
Yeah,
I will be there for season 2, but I mean, reluctantly.
Yeah, same thing with me. I'll watch it if there's nothing else on. Which again, if they're even able to produce season 2, it'll be a miracle. But because I'm worried about anything being able to be produced for the future. But that doesn't have to do with it. Like I said, I'm interested to see where it goes. I want to hope that the show will get better. But yeah, after this first season, Joe, you hit the nail on the head, because for a 32 to 38 minute episode, like this was a struggle for me. Like I was sitting there at work. I had this on in the background, and I'm like, I could care less about what's going on. No joke. I actually, in the middle of like episode 7, I actually fell asleep. I'm not even kidding. I fell asleep while I was watching well, there was nobody in the store. But like I fell asleep. I was like, "Oh my god, when is this thing gonna end?" I was close to the end too.
Good. If you're falling asleep at your post,
that's what I'm saying.
That is not.
That's
good.
what I'm saying.
But it's funny hearing you say that because like when I'm watching a show, if I find myself like I watch a lot of shows on my iPad and stuff just because I'm lazy and don't want to get up and shut the TV off. But if I'm watching it on my iPad and stuff and I tap it to see how much time is left, that's a bad sign for a show.
For sure. Yeah, same.
Sure.
Dude, I did that.
And I do that.
Much.
And I do that with a lot of.
I was like, is this not over yet?
And that's the thing. I do that with almost everything that I watch now, which is just a sign of the times. But like this show, I was doing that heavily. And every time I tapped it, I'm like, okay, we got to be like at least halfway through. And we were only about like 12 minutes through. I was like, oh my god.
So
I'm like, oh no, this is what this is gonna be.
Yeah. So obviously Look is excited for season 2, but hey, you know what? I'm glad you found something in it because I wanted to. Yeah. Now, with that being said, for Bearded Look and everyone else who's been hanging around in the chat, we appreciate you giving us your time in these crazy times. We know that there's a lot of other ways you could be spending it right now, and we just hope that we offered some like reprieve and just a little relaxation because it's very stressful out there. So just stay safe, everyone, and try and get through it with positivity is all I would say, and just try to make the best of these crazy times. Watch Space Force if you can, if you need something to do. With that being said, though, for all of you guys who are here, because this is our first ever like podcast episode that isn't like a watch along with like Joe. I know Elliot's been on one, but we actually hosted that on his channel. He was gracious enough to host us there and sort of help us get a little jump start on YouTube. We like to give our star ratings out of 5 to close this thing out. So just to preface that, I think it would be only great to let the guests go first, So Elliot or Joe, what do you want to give this show out of 5? And I guess last closing statements if you have them, although I feel like we kind of just touched that already. But if you have like one more thing to say, toss it in there. Now's your time.
Elliot, I'll let you go.
Well, so I really when I do my reviews for TV shows, I kind of go really simple in regards to if it's worth it or not. So I really don't do scales of grades, but if I were to give it a score on a my movie scale reviews, probably a 2 out of 5. There is enough meat on the bone for me to be interested in a season 2. There is the potentiality of adding in some new characters, finding some better pairing, and focusing more on the story. But as far as this first season goes, I think it is pretty lackluster, pretty mediocre. Not a lot of laughs. The only reason I really finished is because I invested so much time in it as it was, and I just want to, see how it ended, to see if it got better. Which again, I don't think we haven't highlighted enough of the There were some positive things with the show. We talked about some of the characters. There were some episodes that I liked more than others, towards the back half more than the front. But to wrap it up, I would probably just give it a 2 out of 5, with the potentiality of things getting better for a potential season 2.
No, I feel that.
I think I would go probably 4.5 out of 5. I'm completely kidding. I would go.
Dave, you said that so straight. I almost believed you for a second. I was about to be like, okay, did I just say the Twilight?
That's a better performance than Malkovich.
Am I in the darkest timeline here? What's going on?
No, it's a 1 out of 5 for me, and that's only because I don't believe in giving 0 out of 5s, because I think that every TV show, every movie, someone believed in it, someone had a vision, and regardless of whether I liked it or not, they executed their vision or didn't. But they were able to put that together. So it's a 1 out of 5 for me. I did not. I rarely say this. I did not enjoy one episode of that.
Yep. To quote
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Don't apologize for having an opinion. To quote Martin Thomas from Double Toasted, this felt like Greg Daniels took the giant paycheck that Netflix said. He's like, okay, all of my executive producers, Carell, you got this, cool. I'm going to go take a vacation over here and work on Upload, which I'm clearly more interested in and have more passion in. Because from everything I've heard about that show was the show that like the show wasn't. The show felt like, again, cashing in on a lot of big names and a familiar enough premise to give people the comfort food that they wanted during these harsh times that we're living in right now. And again, if there's people out there that can get something out of the show, I commend them for it. I give them all the credit in the world for it. But for me, at least, yeah, this was boring. It's one thing, right? I've sat through a lot of long shows that take a while for me to get through. I found that to be a constant problem with Netflix. I used to love that they dropped all their episodes at once, but now I'm like, oh my God, it's just becoming more and more of a chore to get through all of them. And I'm sorry, but when a season of Stranger Things to me has better pacing than a half-hour sitcom, that's a problem. But yeah, I was bored for most of this. I was constantly checking the timer, being like, okay, when is this thing going to be over? And the fact that I have to say that, I hate. But yeah, this was. I'm hoping that this has potential for future seasons. But yeah, this is. I'm being generous. This is a 2 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much more I can say that's different than what you guys have already said, but I certainly was let down. I pretty much love everything that, at least one thing that all these cast members have been in the past is like up there in a top 10 of some sort for me. So my heart was very much into this when I first heard of it. I remember when they released the casting, I went nuts. I was like, awesome. How can this fail? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, even just riding on the talent of the cast alone, even if the writing is just there's holes poked in it all over like 3-hole punch gym, this thing can still thrive. And it didn't. It was the furthest thing from that. This was just, it was hard to get through, you know, that the half hours felt like 2-hour Sherlock episodes. So
and even those felt faster than these episodes.
Yeah, even the pacing on those was faster than these episodes.
Not to derail this, and I know you guys are wrapping up, but I was just kind of looking through I don't know who these directors were too. None of them look familiar to me. I never heard of their work, so maybe that's another thing.
I know Dee Reese directed episodes 5 and 6. I don't know if that's
the drama.
I know that's the thing. She's known for directing Mudbound, and she also directed that latest movie that came out earlier this year with Anne Hathaway.
Get some directors that know how to, because that's another thing. You can make a bad script look good, especially with comedy. So bring in some funny directors that know what they're doing with comedy that help things out a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, dude, I didn't like I said, I can only name Carell and Greg Daniels over and over again because those are the only names I recognized, and I was skimming this thing just trying to find someone but I couldn't. And so yeah, it's I'm with Elliot because I think I have a little bit of a bias loving Carell too much and Greg Daniels too much. So yeah, it's a 2 out of 5 for me, but maybe that's just me kind of investing in the future, hoping it's good. Yeah, well, guys, this is it. We our Space Force / I guess the future of comedy episode is really what this was. Has been concluded. I want to thank everyone who watched, who's been here from the start, who tuned in at some point halfway through. We appreciate you giving us your time on a Thursday night, especially because we kind of threw this thing up last minute, and so it was nice to have you guys here hanging out with us. We have a lot going on this month, but so do our guests. And the thing on our show is guests first. So, Elliot, man, why don't you sort of let people know what you have coming up, where people can find you, what they can expect in these next few weeks?
Yeah. Again, this going back to we're in a really difficult time right now in the world, but also just in America. So I will be trying to get back onto the train in regards to putting out some content this weekend, talking about some shows that I'm not looking forward to, but investment in time. I'm going to go ahead and review and watch season 4 of 13 Reasons Why tomorrow. So, because I've watched all the other 3 seasons, so I'm going to go ahead and take one for the team and let you all know if season 4 wrapped up things pretty well. So that's tomorrow and over this weekend. Hulu is going to be premiering Shirley, the new Elizabeth Moss film. So I'm going to be reviewing that. And then, of course, I've been doing my weekly reviews for the Mark Ruffalo, I Know This Much Is True on HBO. So those are some things you can look forward to. And then I kind of postponed some watch alongs, some streams that I had just for the plan this weekend. So I'm going to probably postpone those for next weekend. Hereditary and some other films that I wanted to kind of watch along with some folks. But yeah, you can expect those things. And then this weekend I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be on another channel, Geeky Goods. They're going to be doing a live stream. Simply all of the proceeds are going to Black Lives Matters. I was doing that a little bit earlier today with Jarrett on BJ Studios, was with him. And we did that stream. So I'm going to be doing a lot more of those, just trying to find some people that are trying to get some charities and some fundraisers out there for Black Lives Matter. So that's some things I'm looking forward to as well. So, but outside of that, guys, thank you for having me on. Look forward to teaming back up in another week or two with a watch and lunch you guys have planned. But thank you guys for having me tonight.
Yeah, Elliot, man, you're always welcome on the channel, man. Like we said, you pretty much really helped us get this thing off the ground from the beginning, so we're just, forever grateful. And yeah, that watch along, correct me if I'm wrong, you're on the Toy Story one, right?
Yep, Toy Story 3. June
Toy
19th,
Story 3, guys.
Yeah.
It's
that's going to be a good one.
Little pre-promotion right there. Yeah, June 19th, 9 p.m. We're going to be watching Toy Story 3. It's a Saturday night. We'd love to see you here. Joe, though, what can we expect from you going forward and on your channel and whatnot in these next few weeks?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you.
Can I get a thumbs up or like a
Yep,
message?
you're good here.
I'm just gonna keep talking as if you can hear me. Guys, Guy at the Movies, thanks for having me. My setup is not working well tonight, so I just lost sound for some odd reason. But if you want to swing by guyatthemovies.com, I've gotten the news function going there and been updating with relevant news and the most impactful news, I think, to the movie industry recently. There's a lot of news out there that I think gets pulled out of nowhere and is trying to make a lot out of nothing. So I try to streamline that for you all. After that, getting back on track with daily movie reviews. Tomorrow night is the second Quizzo on YouTube. So it is starts at 7:00. Come as you are. Come by yourself if you'd like. Form a team up to 4. We'll have a cool prize. And there will be 4 rounds of questions. Last week was an absolute blast. So I look forward to hopefully having more fun tomorrow night. We had 10 teams last week. I'm looking for more tomorrow night as well. So please stop by tomorrow night if you're interested. Other than that, thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Hell
no problem. And Dom, you normally like to wrap things up in a nice way, don't you?
I gotta get I gotta get stretched out. I gotta get ready for this. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. As per always, I'm Dom. That's Chris, the movie nerd, the TV nerd. We have a podcast. It's called Talkin TV. We're on Anchor, and we're also on YouTube at Talkin TV or Talkin TV Podcast, no G. And that's some stuff to look forward to. So I've been putting out a couple of top 10 lists on here, kind of just taking everything that I was doing for movie nerd reviews and putting it basically on the Talkin TV channel. I've got top 10 Star Wars lightsaber fights and top 10 community episodes. And I don't know if you guys have seen the hype post that I put up today on Instagram, but I'm also planning on doing a a top 9 Avatar The Last Airbender characters in order to kind of capitalize on the trend that Netflix has had by putting out that show. So that will be up tomorrow at 2 p.m. And also, in order to give you guys some hints as to what we've got coming up on the channel, just as far as I go. So yes, we've got the Jurassic World and the Toy Story 3 anniversary watch-alongs next weekend. Next Friday is the Jurassic World 5-year anniversary, and the weekend after that is the Toy Story 3 10-year anniversary. Got a couple more top 10 lists planned. I'll keep those up in the air, ambiguous and suspenseful. But one thing that I have also hinted at that will definitely start on Monday is I will officially be starting my Marvel ranking series. That's right, people. I will be ranking all 22 movies, not 23, within the Infinity Saga. I don't care what happened, what Kevin Feige says about Spider-Man Far From Home. It came after Endgame, so therefore I don't care, because I don't care about anything that happens after Endgame, even though I will be forced to watch it for the purposes of this podcast. And yeah, I'm going to be all throughout the month of June. Review a day. We'll be hitting 2 Marvel movies in between our regularly scheduled content. It'll be up on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays are the days that I'm looking at. It's going to be nice. They're going to be quick and short like my reviews, and it's going to be a fun time. And I hope you guys can catch up with us. Chris, where can they find us on social media?
Yeah, it's simple, guys. Talkin TV Podcast, TALKIN, no G, on Instagram, Facebook, anywhere that matters. You can follow us on our personals. All that stuff is down there in the descriptions below. Same with Elliot and Joe's information. You can find them there. Yeah, Bearded Films is going to be a guest on an upcoming Jurassic World watch along as well. Hit our YouTube channel for that. The pre-link is up. It's going to be June 12th, Friday night, and or Saturday night, sorry, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to be live at 9:30, just sort of celebrating the 5-year anniversary of that movie, and we'd love to see you guys there. And with that being said, guys, just enjoy. Oh, what's up? Oh, we got to hold on real quick. Flicks, man, howdy. You caught us at the end. We appreciate you dropping by, man. Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, guys, just, stay safe, be considerate, be kind, and just, do whatever you can to try and find some positivity in these crazy times. That's all I got for you. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you giving us your time. Elliot and Joe said it all as much as we possibly can. We're going to say it again. Thank you guys so much for always coming on our show and collaborating with us. It means a lot to us.
You guys are the men, I should say, because I can't say the man individually, and I can't say the mans because that just sounds weird. So I'll just say you guys are the men for coming on here.
Yeah, you guys are the men, and we appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, this was our Space Force conversation. If you check it out, let us know what you think.
Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it more than we did, and people watch more fucking movies.